My name is Katrina, 32 years old, and until recently the marketing director at TechVision. I never thought a simple business card would change the course of my career, but that was before I found myself in an acquisition meeting where my boss's nephew tried to push me out. When he whispered, "Take 3 weeks and go quietly," I knew I had to act fast. The look on his face when the CEO read my card, priceless. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my backstabbing colleague, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to a workplace bully. I joined TechVision 5 years ago when it was just a scrappy startup with 10 employees and a dream. Marcus, the founder and CEO, took a chance on me, despite my limited experience in the tech industry. I don't need someone who knows all the answers, he told me during my interview. I need someone who isn't afraid to find them. That philosophy resonated with me, and I threw myself into building the marketing department from scratch. In those early days, we all wore multiple hats. I wasn't just handling marketing. I was answering customer service calls, helping with product testing, and occasionally making coffee runs when we worked late into the night. That's how startups function. Everyone pitches in wherever needed. Marcus and I developed a strong professional relationship built on mutual respect. He valued my ideas and gave me the freedom to implement innovative marketing strategies that helped grow our user base from a few hundred to over 50,000 in just 2 years. Our product was a digital marketing platform that helped small businesses automate their social media presence and customer engagement. Nothing revolutionary, but we executed it better than our competitors. My team created campaigns that showcased real results from real businesses, and word spread quickly. By year 3, we had grown to 50 employees. By year 5, we hit the 100 mark and were attracting serious attention from larger companies. That's when everything changed. Marcus brought in his nephew Bradley, fresh out of business school with an MBA from a prestigious university, but zero real-world experience. "He just needs to learn the ropes," Marcus assured me. "Having family in the company will be good as we scale." I nodded and smiled, ignoring the sinking feeling in my stomach. From day one, Bradley made it clear he saw me as competition rather than a colleague. He was 28, articulate, and carried himself with the unearned confidence that comes from family connections and expensive education. While I had built my career through hard work and results, Bradley seemed to believe executive positions were his birthright. Initially, I tried to mentor him. I invited him to marketing meetings, explained our strategies, and offered to help him understand our company culture. He smiled, took notes, and then went directly to Marcus with slightly modified versions of my ideas, presenting them as his own. The first time it happened, I convinced myself it was a misunderstanding. By the third time, I knew it was deliberate. The situation escalated when my team launched a campaign targeting mid-sized businesses that increased our conversion rate by 30%. It was the result of months of research testing and refinement. The morning after we released the campaign metrics, I overheard Bradley in Marcus's office. "The strategy I suggested is really paying off." My blood boiled, but I kept my composure. That campaign put us on GlobeTech's radar. GlobeTech was an industry giant looking to expand their small business solutions, and our platform would fit perfectly in their ecosystem. When their representatives reached out to discuss potential acquisition, Bradley somehow positioned himself as the point person, despite having nothing to do with our company's growth or success. Throughout this time, I had allies in the company. Jamie, my senior marketing manager, witnessed Bradley's behavior and encouraged me to speak up. Diana in HR noticed the dynamic and quietly advised me to document everything. But Robert, our COO, who joined around the same time as Bradley, seemed to favor the newcomer. "He brings fresh perspectives from outside the industry," Robert would say, dismissing my concerns about Bradley taking credit for my team's work. As acquisition talks with GlobeTech became more serious, I found myself increasingly sidelined. Bradley began excluding me from strategic meetings, claiming they were just preliminary discussions that didn't require marketing input. When I confronted him about it, he smiled that practiced smile of his and said, "No need to worry your pretty head about the business side of things, Katrina. You just keep making those cute marketing materials." The condescension in his voice made my skin crawl. I'd spent 5 years building this company, alongside Marcus crafting our brand voice, establishing our market position, and developing the very strategies that made us attractive to acquirers. Now, I was being treated like a disposable resource by someone who'd contributed nothing of substance. At home, I started having trouble sleeping. My partner noticed my increased stress and suggested I look for another job rather than continue fighting an uphill battle against nepotism. "Maybe it's not worth it," they said one night. The comment stung because a small part of me wondered if they were right. Was I fighting a losing battle? Should I just cut my losses and move on? But every time I considered giving up, I remembered all the late nights, the risks taken, the campaigns that succeeded against the odds, and the team I'd built who depended on my leadership. This wasn't just about my career, it was about standing up for what I had earned through hard work and results. I couldn't let Bradley's connections and manipulations erase my contributions. As the first round of meetings with GlobeTech approached, the tension in our office became palpable. I noticed my team members getting nervous, unsure about their future in the company. That's when I decided that regardless of the personal cost, I needed to fight back, not just for myself, but for everyone who had helped build TechVision into a company worth acquiring. The acquisition process officially began with a series of preliminary meetings between our executive team and GlobeTech representatives. Vincent Reynolds, GlobeTech CEO, was personally involved, a clear indication of how seriously they were taking the potential acquisition. Vincent was a legend in our industry, known for his sharp business acumen and no-nonsense approach. According to industry blogs, he insisted on meeting the key players behind any company GlobeTech considered acquiring. "I don't buy technology," he was famous for saying. "I invest in people who create great technology." When I learned about Vincent's philosophy, I expected to be included in the initial meetings. After all, our marketing strategies had played a crucial role in our growth. Instead, Bradley forgot to add me to the calendar invites. I only discovered the oversight when Jamie texted me, "Where are you? Meeting started 10 minutes ago." I rushed to the conference room, trying to ignore the embarrassment of being late to such an important discussion. When I entered, Bradley barely concealed his smirk. "Oh, Katrina, we didn't think marketing needed to be involved at this stage," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "But since you're here, feel free to observe." Observe, not participate, not contribute. Just sit silently like an intern rather than a director who had been with the company since its early days. The meeting proceeded with Bradley presenting himself as the architect of our company's growth strategy. Marcus occasionally glanced my way with a slight frown, perhaps wondering why I wasn't speaking up. But in that room, full of executives, and with potential acquirers, present challenging, Bradley would have appeared unprofessional and potentially jeopardized the deal. After the meeting, Jamie pulled me aside. "You need to see this," she whispered, showing me her tablet. She had been compiling a folder of my original presentations alongside the modified versions Bradley had been showing to the GlobeTech team. The changes were subtle, but significant. My data was there, but the strategic insights and recommendations had been altered to align with Bradley's narrative. "He's been doing this systematically," Jamie explained, "taking your decks, changing the attribution, and presenting them as his work. I've been keeping track because something felt off." That evening, I stayed late at the office, combing through shared folders and email threads. What I discovered made my stomach turn. Bradley had been forwarding my strategy documents to his personal email before presenting modified versions to Marcus and Robert. In several instances, he had removed my name from analysis reports entirely. The next morning, I arrived early, determined to speak with Marcus privately. I waited outside his office until he arrived at 7:30. "Do you have a minute?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "For you always," he said, with a warm smile that reminded me of why I had trusted him all these years. I laid out what I had discovered carefully, factually, without accusation. "I'm concerned that the GlobeTech team isn't getting an accurate picture of our company's development and who contributed to what I explained." Marcus's expression grew serious. "That's a significant allegation, Katrina. Bradley has been leading the acquisition process effectively from my perspective. I understand how it might appear that way, I replied, but I have documentation showing. Before I could finish, his phone rang. Sorry, I need to take this. It's Vincent, Marcus said, giving me an apologetic look. Let's continue this conversation later. I nodded and left his office, but that conversation never happened. Bradley somehow always managed to be around Marcus, attending meetings together, having lunch together, staying late to strategize. The nepotism that had been subtle before was now glaringly obvious. Later that week, I directly confronted Bradley after he presented another of my strategies as his own during a team meeting. I caught him alone in the break room. You need to stop taking credit for my work, I said firmly. It's unprofessional and dishonest. Bradley's friendly facade dropped instantly. Look, Katrina, you're good at what you do, creating pretty campaigns and clever taglines. But this acquisition is about business strategy, not marketing fluff. My marketing fluff is what got us on GlobeTech's radar in the first place, I countered. His expression hardened. Know your place. Marcus needs someone with real business credentials handling this deal, not someone who got lucky with a few viral campaigns. Lucky those campaigns were based on data analysis and strategic positioning that. Save it, he interrupted. The acquisition is happening with or without your approval. If you're smart, you'll play along, and maybe there'll still be a spot for you after the transition. The threat was thinly veiled. Bradley wasn't just taking credit for my work. He was actively trying to push me out of the company I helped build. The final blow came when I overheard a conversation between Bradley and Robert that they never intended me to hear. I was working late, and they were in the conference room with the door slightly ajar, discussing the organizational structure post-acquisition. What about Katrina's role? Robert asked. She's expendable, Bradley replied without hesitation. Her team can report to me after the transition. GlobeTech has their own marketing directors. They don't need duplicate positions. Marcus might push back, Robert noted. He values her contribution. Bradley laughed. Marcus listens to me. By the time the deal closes, he'll understand that streamlining leadership is necessary for a smooth integration. I stood frozen outside the door, a printout of quarterly results clutched in my hand. 5 years of dedication, reduced to expendable, in a casual conversation. My career, my team, my contributions, all dismissed by someone who had contributed nothing of value to our company's success. That night I barely slept. Anxiety kept me awake, replaying Bradley's words and calculating my options. The acquisition was moving forward, and with Bradley poisoning the well, my position grew more precarious by the day. I needed to take action. But direct confrontation had failed, and Marcus seemed unwilling or unable to see through his nephew's manipulations. I scheduled another meeting with Marcus the next morning, determined to present my evidence clearly and calmly. But when I arrived at the office, his assistant informed me he had gone to GlobeTech headquarters with Bradley for an unscheduled meeting. My carefully prepared talking points would have to wait another day while Bradley had Marcus's undivided attention for hours. The walls were closing in, and for the first time since joining TechVision, I seriously considered resigning. Maybe fighting against nepotism was futile. Maybe my partner was right, it wasn't worth the stress and heartache. But every time these thoughts surfaced, something inside me rebelled. I hadn't spent 5 years building something valuable just to walk away when someone tried to steal the credit. I decided that if words alone wouldn't work, I needed irrefutable evidence of my contributions to TechVision. I began compiling a comprehensive portfolio, documenting my 5-year journey with the company. First, I gathered performance data from all major marketing campaigns I had designed and implemented. The numbers spoke volumes. Customer acquisition costs had decreased by 60% under my leadership, while conversion rates had tripled. Our social media following had grown from a few hundred to over 500,000 engaged followers. Next, I reached out to clients who had worked directly with me. Rachel from Blue Sky Designs wrote, Katrina's strategic approach revolutionized our online presence. We saw a 40% increase in qualified leads within 3 months of implementing her recommendations. Similar testimonials poured in each, highlighting specific contributions I had made to their business growth. I compiled email threads showing the evolution of marketing strategies that Bradley now claimed as his own. In many cases, I had the original documents with my name in the metadata, followed by Bradley's modified versions where only the attribution had changed. Jamie helped me create a timeline of TechVision's growth correlating major milestones with specific marketing initiatives my team had implemented. The visual representation made it impossible to ignore the impact of our work on the company's valuation. With my portfolio complete, I requested another meeting with Marcus. His assistant scheduled me in for Thursday afternoon, but when Thursday came, I received a last-minute cancellation. Emergency call with GlobeTech legal team, the message read. Marcus sends his apologies. Meanwhile, Bradley escalated his undermining tactics. He began questioning my team's decisions in company-wide emails, positioning himself as providing oversight to marketing, despite having no official authority over my department. When I pushed back in a group setting, he would adopt a concerned expression and say things like, "I'm just trying to ensure we present the best possible face to GlobeTech. We're all under scrutiny right now." The subtle manipulation was effective. Some of my team members began second-guessing their work, afraid of jeopardizing the acquisition. The collaborative atmosphere I had cultivated over years began to deteriorate as people grew anxious about their job security. The situation came to a head during our monthly all-hands meeting. Marcus had asked each department to present their contribution to company growth as part of the acquisition preparation. I had prepared a comprehensive presentation highlighting my team's accomplishments supported by data and client testimonials. 10 minutes before the meeting, Robert informed me that the agenda had changed. "We're consolidating presentations to save time," he explained. "Bradley will cover marketing as part of the overall business strategy section." When I objected, Robert gave me a tight smile. "This came from Marcus. Take it up with him if you have concerns." During the meeting, Bradley presented my marketing strategy as if it had been his brainchild all along. "When I identified the opportunity to target mid-sized businesses," he said, clicking through slides I had created, "I developed this multi-channel approach that ultimately caught GlobeTech's attention." I couldn't stay silent. "Actually, I interjected that strategy was developed by my team last year. I have the original documents with timestamps if anyone would like to review them." The room went silent. Bradley recovered quickly. "Katrina's team certainly helped implement the tactical elements," he conceded with a patronizing smile. "That's what makes us such a great company, everyone contributing at their own level." Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Let's stay focused, people. This isn't about who did what. It's about showing GlobeTech the strength of our combined efforts." After the meeting, Marcus pulled me aside. "I understand you're frustrated," he said, his voice low, "but we need to present a united front during this acquisition. Bradley has experience with corporate mergers that we need right now. Can you try to be more of a team player until this process is complete?" The fact that Marcus couldn't see through Bradley's deception felt like a personal betrayal. This man who had valued my input for years was now asking me to sit quietly while someone else took credit for my work. "Being a team player doesn't mean allowing someone to erase my contributions," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Bradley is systematically taking credit for work he had no part in creating." Marcus sighed. "Let's talk about this after the GlobeTech meeting next week. Right now, we need to focus on getting this deal across the finish line." I walked away from that conversation, feeling utterly defeated. Marcus wasn't just failing to support me, he was actively enabling Bradley's behavior in the name of family loyalty and a smooth acquisition. That evening, I considered drafting my resignation letter. What was the point of fighting? If the person who should recognize my value had been blinded by nepotism, I started updating my resume, looking at job openings at other companies, and imagining a fresh start somewhere. My contributions would be acknowledged. Diana from HR noticed my dejected demeanor the next day and invited me for coffee. "Don't give up," she urged, after I explained the situation. "I've seen this pattern before. Family businesses often struggle with professional boundaries, but the truth has a way of surfacing. Not without help, I replied bitterly. Bradley has Marcus wrapped around his finger. Maybe Diana conceded. But Vincent Reynolds isn't family. He's known for valuing substance over style. The Globe Tech meeting might be your opportunity to set the record straight. Her words gave me a glimmer of hope. The acquisition meeting would bring in outside perspectives, people who didn't have pre-existing relationships with Bradley, people who might recognize authentic expertise when they saw it. Document everything Diana advised, and be prepared to speak up at the right moment. Sometimes all it takes is one opportunity to change the narrative. I left that coffee meeting with renewed determination. I wouldn't resign, at least not until I had made one final attempt to claim credit for the work that was rightfully mine. The Globe Tech meeting would be my last stand, one way or another. The day of the crucial acquisition meeting arrived with a weight of finality. This wasn't just another corporate gathering. It would determine TechVision's future and my own. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit that projected both confidence and professionalism, taking extra time with my appearance because I knew first impressions would matter. GlobeTech's executive team would be evaluating everything about our company, from our technology to our talent. If Bradley succeeded in sidelining me today, my role would almost certainly be eliminated in the restructuring that would follow the acquisition. I arrived at the office an hour early to review my materials one last time. My portfolio was organized, my talking points rehearsed, and I had even prepared specific responses to questions I anticipated from Vincent Reynolds. I felt as ready as I could be for whatever the day might bring. At 8:30, I headed to our largest conference room, where the meeting would take place. The space had been transformed overnight. Fresh flowers on the table, new leather portfolios with both companies' logos, and a professional catering spread in the corner. This was clearly Marcus's attempt to impress our potential acquirers. People began filtering in, Robert, adjusting his tie nervously. Diana arranging name placards, Jamie setting up the presentation equipment. Marcus arrived with Bradley at his side, both wearing nearly identical gray suits that emphasized their family resemblance. Big day, Marcus announced, clapping his hands together. Everyone clear on their roles. That's when I noticed something odd. There was no place card with my name at the main table. I scanned the room and spotted a chair against the wall, separated from the primary discussion area. "Excuse me," I said to Diana. "I think there's a mistake with the seating arrangement." She avoided my eyes. The seating plan came directly from Marcus this morning. I wasn't authorized to make changes. Before I could respond, Marcus gathered everyone for a pre-meeting huddle. GlobeTech will be here in 15 minutes. Bradley will lead the presentation of our business metrics and growth strategy. Robert will cover operations and integration possibilities. I'll handle the financial projections and closing statements. I waited for him to mention my role, but he continued without pause. "Any questions before they arrive?" "What about marketing?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the anger building inside me. That's been a key driver of our growth and valuation. Bradley smoothly interjected. "I'll be covering all aspects of our growth strategy, including marketing initiatives. We want to present a cohesive narrative, rather than fragmenting the presentation across too many speakers." The implication was clear. I had been completely removed from the presentation schedule. Despite leading the very campaigns that had caught GlobeTech's attention, I would be sitting on the sidelines while Bradley took full credit. Marcus nodded in agreement. "Too many presenters will confuse the message. Bradley has consolidated everything into a streamlined presentation." I bit back, the protest rising in my throat. Making a scene minutes before the GlobeTech team arrived would only make me look unprofessional. Instead, I took my assigned seat against the wall, opened my notebook, and focused on controlling my breathing. At precisely 9 o'clock, Vincent Reynolds entered the room, followed by his executive team. Vincent was shorter than I had expected from his media appearances, but his presence filled the room immediately. He had piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they landed on, and a firm handshake that conveyed confidence without aggression. "Thank you for hosting us," he said to Marcus. "I'm looking forward to understanding what makes TechVision tick." The meeting began with introductions around the table. When they reached me sitting apart from the others, Bradley quickly explained, "That's Katrina from our marketing department. She'll be observing today." Vincent nodded politely in my direction before returning his attention to the important people at the table. I felt like a spectator at my own career funeral. Bradley launched into his presentation, displaying slides I recognized immediately as revised versions of my work. He spoke confidently about market positioning, customer acquisition strategies, and competitive differentiation, all concepts my team had developed and implemented. Our unique approach to targeting mid-sized businesses resulted in a 63% growth in recurring revenue, he explained, clicking through charts I had created. By focusing on specific vertical markets, we established ourselves as the go-to solution for automated marketing in the professional services sector. I watched Vincent Reynolds as he listened. He asked occasional clarifying questions, but gave little indication of his thoughts. His poker face was legendary in business circles, and he was living up to that reputation today. The presentation continued smoothly until Vincent asked about specific performance metrics for our most recent campaign targeting legal firms. "The conversion rates you're claiming seem unusually high for that sector," he noted. "What specific tactics drove those results?" Bradley hesitated, clearly unprepared for such a detailed question. "Well, we implemented a multi-channel approach that resonated with that particular audience," he offered vaguely. "Yes, but what specifically differentiated your approach?" Vincent pressed. "Legal firms are notoriously difficult to convert through digital marketing. What was your secret sauce?" I knew the answer intimately. We had created specialized content addressing specific compliance challenges unique to law firms, combined with case studies showing measurable time savings for paralegals. This hyper-targeted approach had required extensive research and industry-specific knowledge, none of which Bradley possessed. "We optimized our messaging based on market research," Bradley stammered, "and leveraged existing client relationships to enhance credibility." Vincent's expression remained neutral, but I noticed his chief marketing officer exchange a skeptical glance with her colleague. They weren't buying Bradley's vague explanation. Marcus jumped in to redirect the conversation, but the damage was done. Bradley's inability to answer specific questions about marketing strategy had created a credibility gap that threatened the entire presentation. As the meeting progressed, I noticed Vincent becoming less engaged. His questions became shorter, less curious, and his team started checking their phones, never a good sign during an acquisition discussion. During a scheduled 15-minute break, I watched as Marcus pulled Bradley aside for what appeared to be an intense conversation. Bradley's face flushed red as Marcus gestured emphatically. The facade was cracking. As I stood to stretch my legs, Bradley approached me with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. He leaned in, close voice barely above a whisper. "Take 3 weeks and go quietly. Your role won't exist after the acquisition anyway." Those words crystallized everything for me. Bradley wasn't just taking credit for my work, he was actively trying to push me out before the acquisition completed. He wanted me gone before Vincent and his team could discover who had really built TechVision's market presence. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The anxiety and self-doubt that had plagued me for weeks transformed into clarity and resolve. I had spent 5 years pouring my heart and soul into this company. I had earned my place at that table, and I would not go quietly. As the break neared its end, I made a decision that would either salvage my career or end it completely. I went to my office and retrieved the portfolio I had so carefully prepared, along with my business cards. The cards were nothing special, standard company design, with my name and title, but they included something Bradley's didn't: a custom QR code that linked directly to a digital version of my portfolio. When we reconvened, Vincent and his team returned to their seats, notepads open, but enthusiasm visibly diminished. Bradley had damaged our credibility with his inability to substantiate his claims, and the energy in the room had shifted from interested exploration to polite obligation. Marcus began discussing potential integration timelines, but I could see Vincent's chief financial officer checking his watch. We were losing them. I took a deep breath, stood up from my seat against the wall, and walked purposefully to Vincent Reynolds. Conversations around the table stuttered to a halt as I approached the GlobeTech CEO. "Mr. Reynolds," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "before you make any decisions about TechVision, there's something I believe you should see." I handed him my business card. Simple, unassuming, but potentially career-ending either his or mine. Vincent looked at me with mild surprise, then down at the card. He noticed the QR code and raised an eyebrow. "It links to a comprehensive portfolio of marketing strategies and campaigns I've developed for TechVision over the past 5 years," I explained, "including detailed metrics on the legal sector campaign you asked about earlier." The room had gone completely silent. Marcus stared at me with an unreadable expression. Bradley's face had drained of color. Vincent pulled out his phone and scanned the code. As he scrolled through the digital portfolio on his screen, his expression shifted from polite interest to focused attention. He paused on a particular page, the case study of our legal sector campaign, and nodded slowly. "This answers my question," he said, looking up at me. "Targeted content addressing compliance pain points with specific metrics for time savings. That makes sense given the conversion rates." He continued scrolling, examining the documented history of campaigns, client testimonials, and growth metrics. After a moment, he looked up at Marcus, then at Bradley, then back to me, with new understanding in his eyes. "Miss Warren," he said, using my last name formally, "would you mind explaining your role in developing these marketing strategies?" Bradley attempted to interject. "As I mentioned earlier, our team approach means everyone contributes elements to the overall—" "I'd like to hear from Miss Warren directly," Vincent interrupted, his tone pleasant but firm. I took the opening and explained my 5-year journey with TechVision, from building the marketing department from scratch to developing the targeted vertical strategy that had ultimately attracted GlobeTech's interest. I outlined specific campaigns, complete with metrics, and explained the data-driven approach that informed our messaging across different sectors. "The 63% growth in recurring revenue that Mr. Wallace mentioned," I said, nodding toward Bradley, "resulted directly from our micro-vertical strategy that identified underserved segments within larger markets. We didn't just target professional services broadly. We created specialized content for legal accounting architecture and consulting firms, addressing unique pain points in each vertical." Vincent turned to his chief marketing officer. "This aligns much more closely with the market positioning we observed from the outside," she confirmed. "The sector-specific approach is what caught our attention initially." Bradley attempted to regain control. "As I was overseeing these initiatives—" "When did you join TechVision?" Mr. Wallace, Vincent asked mildly. Bradley shifted in his seat. "About 8 months ago." "Interesting," Vincent replied. "Many of these campaigns predate your arrival by years, according to the timeline Miss Warren has provided." The atmosphere in the room had transformed. Vincent's team was engaged again, asking me specific questions about campaign execution, customer acquisition costs, and retention strategies. I answered each question with confidence supported by concrete data. Marcus watched the exchange with a dawning realization on his face. He had been so blinded by family loyalty that he had failed to see what was happening right under his nose. His nephew had been systematically taking credit for another executive's work and nearly sabotaged the acquisition in the process. After I finished answering questions, Vincent turned to Marcus. "I think we should continue our discussion with the actual architect of your marketing strategy, present at the table." He gestured to an empty chair beside him. "Would you join us, Miss Warren?" As I took my seat at the main table, Bradley's face showed the dawning realization that his career machinations had backfired spectacularly. He had attempted to push me out, and instead he had just become irrelevant to the very acquisition he hoped would elevate his position. Vincent addressed the room. "At GlobeTech, we value substance over presentation. We're interested in acquiring TechVision not just for its technology, but for the talent and expertise that built it." He looked directly at me. "That includes the marketing innovation that positioned you in the market so effectively." For the first time in months, I allowed myself to feel something beyond anxiety and frustration. As the meeting continued with me now seated at the table, I recognized the emotion vindication. The remainder of the acquisition meeting proceeded with a dramatically different dynamic. I was no longer relegated to the sidelines but seated at the main table directly contributing to the discussion. Vincent directed several questions specifically to me, and I answered with the confidence that comes from genuine expertise and first-hand experience. Your micro-vertical strategy particularly interests us, Vincent noted. We've traditionally struggled to penetrate the smaller professional services firms. How did you identify which segments to target first? I explained our data-driven approach to market segmentation and the customer research that had informed our messaging strategy. GlobeTech's executives took notes and asked follow-up questions that demonstrated genuine interest rather than mere politeness. Bradley sat silently at the far end of the table, his earlier bravado replaced by barely concealed resentment. Each time I provided insights he couldn't have offered, his jaw tightened visibly. Marcus alternated between engagement with the discussion and troubled glances at his nephew, clearly processing the implications of what had transpired. When we broke for lunch catered in a smaller conference room, Vincent approached me privately. That portfolio was quite illuminating, he said. I appreciate your initiative in making sure we had the full picture. I believe in standing up for my work, I replied simply. He nodded. That's precisely the kind of leadership we value at GlobeTech. Between us, we were close to walking away after the morning session. The numbers looked good, but something felt off about the presentation. Now I understand why. His candor surprised me. I'm glad I could help clarify things. More than clarify, Vincent said. You've significantly increased my interest in this acquisition. He lowered his voice, and in retaining key personnel through the transition. As lunch concluded, Marcus asked me to join him in his office for a moment. His expression was a complex mixture of emotions, embarrassment, regret, and something that looked like relief. I owe you an apology, he began once the door closed behind us. I allowed personal relationships to cloud my professional judgment, and in doing so, I nearly lost one of my most valuable team members. Not just that, I replied, feeling bold enough to speak plainly. You nearly tanked the acquisition. Vincent told me they were close to walking away before I showed them my portfolio. Marcus winced. I suspected as much from how quickly the energy changed in that room. He ran a hand through his hair. Bradley is my sister's son. I promised her I'd give him an opportunity when he graduated, but I never intended. For him to take credit for other people's work I finished for him, or to actively undermine a long-standing team member. No, Marcus said firmly. Never that. I was blind to what was happening, and that's on me as a leader. The conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Robert entered looking uncomfortable. Everyone's ready to resume, he said. And Vincent specifically asked if Katrina would present the marketing integration possibilities. Marcus nodded. Of course she will. It's her area of expertise. The afternoon session focused on how TechVision would integrate with GlobeTech's existing product lines. When it came time for my impromptu presentation, I outlined a vision for how our marketing approach could scale across GlobeTech's broader portfolio, potentially increasing conversion rates across multiple product lines. Vincent's team engaged, enthusiastically building on my ideas and suggesting potential collaborations. By the time we concluded, the acquisition, which had seemed in jeopardy just hours earlier, appeared to be back on solid ground. As the meeting wrapped up, Vincent made his position clear. Based on what we've seen today, GlobeTech remains very interested in acquiring TechVision. However, I want to be transparent about a key condition. We want commitments from specific personnel to remain with the company through the transition and beyond. He looked directly at me, particularly those responsible for the marketing strategies that have driven your growth. Bradley, who had remained largely silent during the afternoon session, finally spoke up. I can assure you that our entire executive team is committed to a smooth transition, he said, attempting to include himself in the retention conversation. Vincent's response was polite but clear. We'll be specifying exactly which personnel we consider essential to the deal. I've seen enough today to know who the key contributors are. After the GlobeTech team departed, promising to send a preliminary term sheet within days, the TechVision office buzzed with excited conversation. The acquisition that would reward years of hard work was moving forward, and I had reclaimed my rightful position in the process. As I packed up my materials, Bradley approached me. His earlier smugness had been replaced by barely controlled anger. "Enjoy your moment," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "But this isn't over. You made me look like a fool, in front of everyone." "You did that yourself," I replied calmly. "I simply presented the truth." His eyes narrowed. "Marcus might be impressed with your little power play today, but he's still my uncle. Blood is thicker than water, and when the dust settles, family sticks together." "Is everything okay here?" Diana's voice interrupted us. She had approached quietly, witnessing Bradley's aggressive posture. "Just congratulating Katrina on her presentation," Bradley said instantly, switching to his public persona. "Really saved the day." Diana's expression made it clear she didn't believe him for a second. "Marcus is looking for you, Bradley. Something about revising the transition team structure." After Bradley departed, Diana turned to me. "I saw that exchange. Do you want me to document it?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "And any other unprofessional behavior. I suspect this won't be the last confrontation." I was right. Over the next 2 days, Bradley made several attempts to reassert his authority, sending emails questioning my team's projections and suggesting improvements to our processes. Each time I responded with data and documentation, copying Marcus and Robert to establish a paper trail. On the 3rd day, Vincent's promised term sheet arrived with an unexpected clause. GlobeTech required written confirmation that specific TechVision employees would remain for a minimum of 18 months post-acquisition. My name was at the top of the list. Bradley's was nowhere to be found. That afternoon, Marcus called a private meeting with Robert, Bradley, and me. "GlobeTech has made their position clear," he said, sliding the term sheet across the table. "They value Katrina's contribution enough to make her retention a condition of the deal." Bradley's face flushed red. "This is ridiculous. They barely know her." "They know her work," Marcus replied, "which, as we all now understand, has been central to our success." He turned to me. "Are you willing to commit to the 18-month term they're requesting?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I believe in what we've built and want to see it grow under GlobeTech's umbrella." Marcus nodded, then turned to his nephew. "Bradley, after careful consideration, I've decided to remove you from the transition team. Your recent behavior has demonstrated that you're not ready for the level of responsibility this situation requires." Bradley's eyes widened in shock. "You can't be serious. I'm your nephew." "Which is exactly why this is so difficult," Marcus said quietly. "But I have a responsibility to everyone at TechVision, not just my family. Your actions nearly derailed an acquisition that will benefit all our employees." Because she turned the meeting into a personal showcase, Bradley protested, pointing at me. "No," Marcus countered firmly. "Because you tried to take credit for work you didn't do and then couldn't answer basic questions about that work when challenged." Vincent saw through it immediately. If Katrina hadn't stepped in with actual expertise, they would have walked away entirely. The reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on Bradley. His career advancement plan had not only failed but backfired spectacularly. Instead of positioning himself for a leadership role in the acquired company, he had demonstrated his lack of substantive contribution and ethical shortcomings. As we left Marcus's office, I felt no triumph in Bradley's downfall, only relief that the truth had finally come to light. My work would be recognized, my team protected, and the company I helped build would continue to grow under new ownership. The vindication wasn't about defeating Bradley. It was about standing up for myself and the value I had created. Sometimes, the most important battles we fight aren't against others, but against our own doubts about whether speaking up is worth the risk. In this case, it undoubtedly was. 6 months have passed since that pivotal day in the conference room, and the acquisition has been finalized. I'm writing this from my new office at GlobeTech headquarters, where I now lead an expanded marketing team that combines talent from both companies. The transition wasn't always smooth. Merging company cultures never is. But the experience taught me valuable lessons about self-advocacy and resilience that have shaped my leadership approach in this new role. In the weeks following the acquisition meeting, Marcus worked hard to rebuild our professional relationship. The trust that had been damaged by his temporary blindness to Bradley's manipulations didn't return overnight, but his actions showed genuine remorse and a commitment to setting things right. "I failed you as a leader," he acknowledged during one of our candid conversations. "I let personal relationships cloud my judgment, and it nearly cost us everything we built together." Bradley left TechVision shortly after being removed from the transition team. According to industry gossip, he attempted to damage my reputation with potential employers by sharing misleading accounts of what had transpired. Fortunately, the truth had already circulated through professional networks, and his efforts gained no traction. The last I heard, he had taken a position at a smaller competitor, where I genuinely hope he learned from the experience and chose a different path forward. Vindictiveness serves no one in the long run, and I prefer to focus my energy on growth rather than grudges. Vincent Reynolds proved to be exactly the kind of leader I had hoped, someone who values substance over style and recognizes genuine contribution. Under GlobeTech's umbrella, my team has received the resources and support to expand our successful strategies across a broader product portfolio. "Your micro-vertical approach has transformed how we think about market segmentation," Vincent told me during our quarterly review. "Sometimes it takes an outside perspective to show us our blind spots." I've made it a priority to build a team culture based on transparency and shared credit. Each team member's contributions are acknowledged and celebrated, creating an environment where collaboration thrives because people don't fear having their work appropriated by others. Jamie, who stood by me during the darkest days at TechVision, now leads our content strategy team. Her loyalty and integrity earned her the promotion, and she's flourishing in the role. Diana also joined GlobeTech as part of the HR integration team, bringing her ethical compass and people-focused approach to the larger organization. The emotional journey wasn't easy. For weeks after the acquisition, I experienced a strange mix of vindication and lingering anxiety. Proving myself right didn't immediately erase the self-doubt that had accumulated during months of gaslighting and undermining. Healing took time and conscious effort. I found support through a mentoring group for women in tech leadership positions. Sharing my experience helped me process it, and I discovered my story was unfortunately common. Many talented professionals have faced similar situations where their contributions were minimized or appropriated by others, particularly women and people from underrepresented groups. This realization inspired me to become a more active mentor myself, particularly for junior team members navigating complex workplace dynamics. I now hold monthly sessions where I share practical advice on documenting contributions, building allies across departments, and advocating effectively for recognition. Document everything I tell them, echoing Diana's advice that ultimately saved my career. Not out of paranoia, but because clear records benefit everyone who values truth and fairness. I also emphasize the importance of building relationships beyond your immediate supervisor. Had I relied solely on Marcus's perception, I might have been sidelined permanently. Instead, relationships with colleagues like Jamie and Diana provided crucial support when I needed it most. Perhaps the most valuable lesson from this experience is about the balance between patience and action. For too long, I waited for Marcus to recognize what was happening, hoping the truth would naturally rise to the surface. I've learned that sometimes you need to create the opportunity for truth to be seen, rather than waiting for others to see it. The business card moment, that split-second decision to approach Vincent, directly changed everything. It wasn't reckless or impulsive. It was a calculated risk based on careful preparation and absolute certainty in the value of my work. Knowing when to take such risks is a skill I continue to develop. Today, my expanded team is launching GlobeTech's most ambitious marketing initiative, yet applying our targeted approach across their entire product ecosystem. Early results show promise, with conversion rates climbing in previously underperforming sectors. Success is the best vindication, but it's not the only measure that matters. How we achieve our goals shapes who we become along the way. I chose to fight for recognition by demonstrating value rather than diminishing others, a path that allowed me to maintain integrity throughout a challenging situation. If you're facing similar challenges in your workplace, someone taking credit for your work, undermining your contributions, or positioning themselves at your expense, remember that your worth isn't determined by others' perception. Document your achievements, build allies who see your value, and when the moment comes to stand up for yourself, do so with confidence, grounded in facts rather than emotions. Your business card moment might look different than mine, but recognizing when and how to create it could make all the difference in your professional journey. Have you ever had to stand up for your work when someone else tried to take credit? What strategies worked for you? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more professional journey stories. Remember, sometimes the most important recognition is the one we fight for ourselves. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the courage to hand over your card when it matters most.